Hey everyone, thanks for visiting. Thanks for visiting NiteScape Astro. Today I'm going to do a quick tutorial on FITS files and basic stacking. Hope you enjoy it. We're going to go ahead and look at my image data, and you can see that it's 200 photos that I shot on the Orion Nebula back in Tucson last month. Now when I double click on it, I come up with one subframe. This is called a FITS file. FITS is a file that's specifically designed for astronomy. It has a lot of metadata in it. It keeps a lot of information like the right ascension, the positioning, etc. It also gives you a fairly accurate look of a histogram, and you can see that the data spikes up way on the left and then gradually comes down. This is ideal because all the data is crunched right here, and during post-processing we'll be able to stretch the data out. So whenever I shoot photographs, I set my exposure limits or my exposure times to get a histogram that looks like this. Depending on light pollution and how dark your skies are, will determine if you're over or under exposing. So you have to adjust everything to get the optimum histogram. So you're always looking for your histogram. The next thing we're looking for is stars. We want to make sure that the stars are nice and round. That will tell you that your guiding is accurate, and we'll go into guiding a little bit later on another tutorial. But if your guiding was not good, you would have oval egg-shaped stars. So you can kind of see as we get here that it looks pretty bad. That's just noise. Noise comes out with dark pictures rather than light pictures. So when you're shooting on a standard DSLR, etc., you're not going to see your noise, but at night the noise, when it's dark, becomes prevalent. So that's why we shoot a lot of photographs, and as I move on, it will register these star positions, and it's going to put all 200 photos on top of each other. So let's get to it. So I have a program here called Deep Sky Stacker, and this is a free program. You can download it. You can just search for Deep Sky Stacker, and basically what I'm doing is I'm going to select all 200 of my photos, and I'm going to drag it into here, and these are called light frames, and you can see that they're all listed down here now. And then we have some calibration frames that we're going to be also adding. And I'll be going into the calibration frames as we go throughout the process. But our flat frames are basically a shot of the sensor where it will show all the imperfections, dust, etc., that get into your image train. And it's got to map those dust motes in order to know which areas to remove during calibration and during stacking. The next item we're going to do is we're going to add dark flats. Now, dark flats are shot at the exact same time signature as the flats, except you're going to cover your lens with a black cloth to make sure that no light gets in there, and it just helps calibrate the dark side of things as well to get rid of any imperfections. And then dark files. Dark files are shots that are taken with the lens cap on and at the same exposure length. So these exposures that I shot were only 10 seconds, and at minus 15 degrees Celsius. So once I put those in, you'll see that I have 200 light frames, 10 dark frames, 40 flats, and 40 dark flat frames. The next one is going to be offset and bias. Offset and bias with an Astro camera is not as necessary as with a DSLR, but that's basically a dark frame that is shot at the fastest exposure time that you can get your camera to go. And that's just going to help calibration as well. So now we have all pictures. We're going to register these pictures. And by registering, it's going to line them all up and get them ready to go. And we have a sliding scale here, and this is going to compute the number of stars. And generally speaking, you want like 150 stars. If you go down to 2%, you're going to get a lot of stars, like 285. That's just going to slow your processing down. So we're going to move this up a little bit so that we get into the 120s. That's where I like to be. So 131's fine. I'm going to say OK. And then we're going to go ahead and process these. And it's going to take a couple minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and pause it for now, and I'll come back to you when it's done. And we're back. That took about 5 minutes, so you can see that we still have the 200 photographs right here, but you'll notice that a score was assigned, and this score is based on the clarity and all the noise and whatnot that the algorithm detects, and it's going to rank everything from top to bottom. So it usually sorts everything by the best score. So 955.66 is your best score. We're going to right click that and use this as a reference frame, and you can see that the Orion Nebula looks a little bit different than it did before, because all the data is now compact on top of it, and it's gotten a lot darker. We're not ready yet for processing. We have to do the final step, which is to stack the pictures. So I'm going to go ahead and click stack the pictures, and I'm going to hit OK, and now it's going to run probably a little bit longer this time, but I'll see if we can come up with an ETA real quick. I would say 5 to 10 minutes. So again, I'm going to pause this one or end it here, and we'll catch you on the flip side. And we're back yet again. This process took about 15 minutes to do all 200 photos. You can see that our image is a little bit more detailed when everything's stacked, but nowhere near processed. So the next step we're going to do is I'm going to take you right into Photoshop, and I'm going to do some processing, since I think leaving it off here would be anticlimactic. So I'm going to move up into what's called, I just make a folder called stacks, and when everything's stacked, that's what we got. So it's a TIFF file. So I'm going to double click on that, and I use Photoshop. There are other programs. PixInsight is another one. I'm in the middle of learning that, so I'm not ready to do my processing right now on that. All right. Okay, so the picture looks a little bit different right now. Our image mode, when it comes out of Deep Sky Stacker, is 16 or 32 bits. We need to change that to 16-bit in order to do our editing. And it's going to change to local adaptation. We're going to go back to exposure and gamma so we can get the most out of the photo. We're going to click OK. And I'm going to have a background, and I'm going to duplicate the layer. And I'm going to make this layer called the channel mixer, just to let you know. The reason I do layers, excuse me, is this is called a non-destructive processing. So if I screw something up or I don't like it, I can just delete the layer and not have to worry about starting the whole project over again. So When I put the channel mixer down, I'm going to click over here to histogram, and it's going to show my data points. And you can tell, or you can see that the red, green, and blue channels are there, but they're kind of divided. So what channel mixer is going to do is this just allows me to put all the data back together and start at the same point. So I'm going to use red as my base. I'm going to go to green, and I'm just going to move the green to the level of the red. And when you're set up, everything's going to be yellow. And then blue, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring it down. And in this case, it's going to turn, everything going to go gray. So it kind of gives you a visual idea of when you're there, like right there. Boom. Okay, so you can see it changed color a little bit, but we're nowhere near where we need to be. So I'm going to make another layer, Control-Shift-Alt-E, and then I'm going to double click on the layer and then type levels in. Just like I said, it's non-destructive, so this one is where I'm going to do all my stretching. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Control-L for levels, and you can see that everything's lined up, but it's not to the far left, so I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to bring all my red, green, and blue to the darkest point. And then I'm going to go Control-M, and this is a curves. And I have some predefined curves here. This gives you a hyperbolic curve that is consistent to pull out data. And you can see what it's done. It's pulled out a lot of data. Let's go ahead and undo that real quick. And you can see that in one swoop. It brought everything out. So after every curves adjustment, we're going to go back to levels, and you can see that it's moved the histogram to the right a little bit. So I'm going to continue onward to bring everything down. And then quickly, one thing I forgot to do is that when you stack everything, it's like putting a whole bunch of pieces of paper or newspaper on top of each other. As things move around, you might have some artifacts or some jagged edges on the edge. So what I do is I just bring it in a little bit and I crop it so that it cleans everything up. Just did the levels, so now I'm going to go ahead and do another stretch, and I'm going to do one more on this predetermined stretch line. On the predetermined stretch lines, just because the way the math works out, I was told that if you do 1, you have to do 2. If you do 2, you have to do 4. And 4 blows it out too much, so I only do 2 and then the rest by hand. All right. We're going back to levels, and I'm going to zero it back out and push all the data as far left as possible. And now I'm going to go back to stretching, and this one I'm going to do a manual stretch. So I'm going to just pick a point, and then I'm going to pull my data up, and you don't want to go too high. See where that curve flattens out. You want to pull it back to where it's a consistent curve. Go ahead and Control L for levels, and you can see our histogram's getting bigger and bigger, but this is all the pertinent data that you need. So we're going to zero it back out, get everything back as far left as possible so that the stretching is the most effective. We're going to Control M again for level or for curves. And I'm going to do the same thing yet again. And you can see that it's really popping data right now. And we do this a couple more times. And you can see this little nub right here. I usually come in a little bit and clip some of the data off. I don't seem to mind. Some purists would say don't clip any data whatsoever, but I've always gotten away with clipping it a little bit because I guess OCD, I don't like that little nub there. All right, we're gonna stretch again. Now this time I'm going to do what's called an S curve. So I brought up the highlights here, and then down in this data I'm going to bring it down a little bit. Yeah. Actually, you can. I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to go back and do it again because I blew the core out. I don't want to blow the core out too much because there's stars in there. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's zoom in here. And I've blown the core out a little bit, but it's okay. And if you keep going in, you can see the clouds. But you can see that there's some noise there because no matter what you do, there's going to be a little bit of noise. So there's color correction and whatnot you need to do in order to keep it. Now, with my telescope, which is the RASA, it shoots everything inverted in a mirror image. So, to keep everything pure, I'm going to go Image, and I'm going to go Image Rotation, flip horizontally. Eventually we'll get there. And then we're going to go Image, Rotation, and flip vertical. And this is the way it looks that it's supposed to look. And the Orion Nebula is really a lot of nebulosity put together. The nebula itself is M42, but there's a nebula here, and then this is called the Running Man Nebula. And if you look at it, it looks like a guy with his arms stretched out and two legs. So that's where it gets the name Running Man. It's kind of an interesting, funny thing. But you'll see that a lot in astronomy where people will make shapes and then you'll name it based on the shape because that's the way it looks. So our stretching is done. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start another layer, Control Shift Alt E. My computer is running slow today for some reason. And this is going to be RC Astro. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of make this gradient go away. You probably don't see it because it's not evident. But I'm going to use my lasso tool. And I'm just going to outline the nebulosity that I want to protect from this image. And boom. Now, I don't want to touch anything inside here. I want to touch everything outside. So instead of doing that, I'm going to select the inverse. And now it's going to apply everything to the outside. I'm going to go into my filters. and I have a plugin called RC Astro Gradient Exterminator. I just keep everything default to medium because that's the right choice. And if you watch carefully, you'll see the gradient average out. Boom. So now we've got average skies. Let's go before and after. See that? There we go. Okay, so now we've done the Astro. We're gonna add another layer, and we're gonna do colors. And this is where we're gonna try to bring out some colors on some of the nebulosity. So we're gonna select color range, and I'm gonna use my little teardropper, my little dropper, and I'm gonna select the color that I wanna bring out and make sure it's consistent throughout the whole project. So you see when I click it, we're gonna see all these areas that are out the same color, and I can adjust fuzziness up and down. The more you adjust it, the more it's gonna blend the colors. So you wanna have this thing focused down right in this area, right in the 60-70 range. I've always found this good. So once I hit OK, you'll see that a lot of areas selected. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, and I'm going to up the saturation to about 12 to 15, somewhere in that area. And what that's going to do is, watch, I'm going to take the layer off, and you can see that the color jumped a little bit. It's very subtle, but you do it on a lot of colors, and it's going to pay off dividends in your main picture. Alright. Adjustments, hue and saturation. And we're going to go up to 12 to 13. And then we're going to look at it again. Boom. Boom. Okay. Now, there's a lot more I can do, but this is kind of a basic stretch for you. I'm going to move on to noise. And noise is the reduction of all that junk that I showed you. It's going to blend it all, and it's going to make it a little bit smoother. So I have an action pack that I had purchased, astronomy tools, and basically it's batch files that do the processes for you, so you don't have to go through 20 steps. So it's well worth the money if you're getting into it. I'm going to hit play, and it's going to run the batch. This usually takes about 30 seconds. So it's applying everything right now. Almost done. There we go. So what I'll do is I'll zoom in on some of this noisy area here. Turn it off. You can see how it's blended it out a little bit. And that's only step 1 for noise. That was space noise reduction. Now we're going to go deep space noise reduction. And it's going to do a set of actions as well to address these. There we go. All right, again, we're going to look at that. You can see it's almost like a checkerboard pattern, and now it's become a lot smoother. We zoom out, you're really not going to see it, but trust me, when you enlarge it, you're gonna see this. So once you've blended the noise out, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to up the contrast now. And this action is called local contrast enhancement. Never realize how long it takes until you're videoing it. Alright. Oh, did you see how that popped? So we're going to take the contrast off. And it's basically sharpened the edges a lot. So let's see if you can see the difference from perspective. See that? So that brings it in. So that's pretty much basically the stretching tutorial. Give you an idea of how big these images are. Right now, as a TIFF, it's 8820 by 8876. So this image is 438 megabytes in size. So it can be scaled down, and it's only 100 DPI right now. As you make it smaller, you can increase your DPI and keep your resolution. You can compact all your pixels, and you can make a really good print. And that's why I sell my prints at my Astro photography store. When you have them printed on your media, you're not going to get any pixelation or any noise. So they look really super duper, and they really pop off the aluminum. So it's great to decorate your walls with. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm going to get ready, and I'm going to show you a comparison from a FITS file to a final file. Thank you very much. And you can see the image on the left is the original FITS file, and the image on the right is the processed Orion. So you can really see how it changes things up.